Welcome back to the second installment of our overview of the Clinical Psychology Doctorate Program at Miami University. Let's talk a little bit about research and scholarly engagement. Although technically our students are admitted to the program as a whole, we do work under a very strong mentorship model. And as you can see from the word cloud here, our researchers, all of our faculty, study a wide range of different types of aspects of psychology. We really do have a very strong mentor model. Each lab group has a primary research advisor, a PI, in that way. But a lot of our students also spend some time working in different labs. So we have not only a strong sort of individual lab model, but also a very strong collaborative model. As just a few examples of that collaboration, several of my own students have worked in other labs and collaborated with other faculty and graduate students on different projects. There are several of our labs that also have joint grad lab meetings. So for example, my lab meets with Dr. Keel's lab to go over sort of workshopping of research milestones or papers. We do some professional development. I know the ACE and the Scout lab from Drs. McGee and Drs. Clerkin also do somewhat similar of a joint research lab. So all of you will be assigned a primary research advisor. Those are the folks that you're primarily interviewing with, but there is a lot of opportunity for collaboration. In fact, I often like to call our department sort of a screen model in the sense that, yes, you have a home base, but it's very diffuse between labs. We don't have strong boundaries between labs, and there's a lot of collaboration that goes on among our students and faculty. And this goes for within clinical as well as between the different areas of the department, as I mentioned in our last video. Let's talk a little bit about these research milestones. So as we mentioned in the last video, there's the master's thesis, the comprehensive exam, and dissertation are the three main milestones. Now students do research outside of these milestones as well, but I wanted to highlight these three and give you a sense of what that process looks like. So for the master's thesis, assuming that you're not an individual coming in already with a master's, but for a student who doesn't have a master's, at the end of the first year, all of our students in the first year cohort do a short 10-minute overview presentation of either their master's thesis or, if you come in with a master's, what we call the first year project. Most of our individuals then are defending their thesis by the end of year 2. Now I would say it's probably about a 50-50 mix as to whether or not students for their master's thesis are collecting new data or utilizing archival or pre-existing data. Now that tends to primarily fall along somewhat boundaries of adult and child. A lot of our child folks, because we have developmental data sets, tend to use pre-existing data and it takes a long time to collect kids, whereas a lot of our adult-focused students tend to collect their own data for master's theses. But that's not necessarily set in stone. For example, I know a lot of students in Dr. Messman's lab use her Project WISE data, which was a 5-year R01 grant that followed women longitudinally who had been survivors of sexual assault. So there's a lot of mixing with that. In year 3 then is when students do the comprehensive exam. Now we have 3 options for our comprehensive exams, although I will say that no one has chosen option 3 here since I've been here for the last 11 years. So students are primarily doing options 1 or 2. Option 1 is to write a grant, a predoctoral grant that would be equivalent to something like National Institute of Health's National Research Service Award, or what's called an NRSA, that would be used to fund the dissertation. A lot of our students, although there's not a requirement to do so, a lot of our students do tend to submit those, and we've had some success there. The other option is to write a systematic literature review like you might read in Psychological Bulletin or Clinical Psych Review or a Clinical Child and Family Psych Review. So sort of a larger overview, systematic overview of a given literature area. Now both of these options are designed to really grease the wheels towards moving and making progress towards the dissertation. Now the third option is a traditional written closed book exam over 2 days. This would be sort of what our students in social and the BCD area do. They create a reading list with the help of their mentor and their committee, and then they read that list and then they answer questions about that kind of spewing what they know over 2 days in a writing session. Again, most of our students choose option 1 or 2, the grant or the literature review, because it does facilitate the dissertation. I would also say that there's other sort of products that can come from those comprehensive exams. So for example, as I mentioned, we've had several of our students submit their NRSAs with some funding success, or in terms of the systematic literature review, I'm extremely proud to say that of the students in my lab who have done this option, we've published almost all of them, and so that's a nice way to get another line on the vita and contribute to the literature. Starting usually in year 4, by the end of year 4 is when we require students to propose. Students work on their dissertation. Now I will say that the majority of individuals, although not all again, do collect new data for their dissertations, and there's a wide range of different dissertation topics that folks do, and you can hear more about those in the particular labs that you're interested in working with. As I mentioned before, several of our students do defend prior to internship, and that's what we recommend. I would say that at this point, just given sort of time and scope of a lot of projects that are amazing, we've got about half of our students defending prior to internship and half defending while they're on internship. There's a lot of resources for research here at Miami. We have a large undergraduate research pool, and we have excellent undergraduates just in general. And what this means is that certainly if you need to collect data using an undergraduate population, maybe doing some experimental work, we have access to that. Typically we have about 400 to 500 students in our Introduction to Psychology courses each semester. So that's 1,000 students across a year that you might have access to if you study adult populations and can do things with that kind of population pool. But more importantly as well is that we have extremely strong undergraduates, being a very strong undergraduate focused institution, and these undergraduates are actively engaged and want to be engaged in working in research labs. I have mentioned before that we have about 400 of our undergraduate students working in labs across the department. And so what this means is that you get the pick of the lot of the best students to work in your labs. There's many opportunities to mentor those students. There are some formal opportunities. For example, I have this word listed here, DUOS, which stands for the Doctoral Undergrad Opportunities for Success. And what that is a competitive grant that students can apply for with an undergraduate to fund a particular project, and we've had a lot of success in the department with DUOS awards. We have well-equipped research and computer labs. You can see some of those in the building tour that's up online as well. And we have access to most major software packages that you would hope to have, including licenses to Qualtrics, experimental software like ePrime. We have access to statistical software, obviously SPSS and SAS. R is open source. Several of our labs, and when I teach it, I provide for students access to things like M+ for structural equation modeling, so we have those kinds of software packages available. If you were to come here, there would be opportunities for training in psychophysiological assessment, including things like the Center for Psychophysiology, which does EEG work. You may be able to get training in things like peripheral psychophysiology, heart rate, RSA, through the park or some labs. So for example, Dr. Smith, Dr. Keel's labs use these techniques. Other labs are using functional near-infrared spectroscopy, including my own lab, where this is a low-cost neuroimaging technique. So we have access to this. There is formal training for EEG in the sense that Dr. Thomas in the BCD area has a class that she runs for EEG training. The other types of training would happen more, I don't know what you would say, organically or in labs. Basically it happens sort of through the mentorship model in these particular labs that use these techniques. We have research and travel funds through both the department and the graduate school. Travel, has been a little bit rougher this semester or this past year with the pandemic, but we do offer research for funding things like master's and dissertation projects. A lot of our students have been able to secure other grants to help supplement funding for dissertations, and also have been successful in using our university's crowdsourcing platform for fundraising research dollars as well. We would love to offer more travel. Right now, we're offering somewhere between $450 and $650. We're hoping that number will increase for students to be able to travel to conferences as well. We're a well-funded department. In recent years, all 8 of our tenure track faculty were PIs, co-PIs, or co-Is on active grants, pulling in over $3 to $3.5 million. Our graduate students have been extremely successful. We've had one NIH NRSA in the past few years. This was actually Miami's first NRSA, came in our area in our department. We've been successful in recently having 4 NSF graduate research fellowships. We've also had other students submit NRSAs that are actually now in the resubmission process that seem pretty likely to be funded, so we're super excited about that. You can see the list here of some of the kinds of funding institutes that have supported work in the department, everywhere from sort of local sources from the state of Ohio to NIH, the Military Suicide Research Consortium, and USIEF, which funded a project that Dr. Ravel did, which was a sort of capacity building project where we had a series of faculty exchanges with a sister school in Bangalore, India, Christ University. So exciting work that's happening in the department. Finally, I just want to talk a little bit about sort of student research, kinds of what they're producing and where students typically attend conferences. So in a typical year, students present research at a conference on average 2 to 3 times. Obviously, the pandemic has sort of shifted that a little bit, but I think when we're all back in person at places, we'll see that number creep back up again to around 2 to 3 times. They're giving posters. A lot of our students are giving talks or even organizing symposia, and our students are really active in terms of publishing. So obviously this may happen more towards the end of your career, so these averages are averaged across students in years 1 through 6. But students are publishing an average of 1 to 2 research projects in a given year, and so these include obviously peer-reviewed journal articles or reviews or book chapters. Some of those comprehensive exams turn into systematic reviews that get published as well. So super highly productive faculty and students. I think people are excited about research, people are actively engaged in research, people are doing meaningful research, and they're getting it published in great places. Finally, just want to list some of the places that our students are disseminating research. Obviously, our faculty are disseminating research here as well. These include some of the bigger places like American Psychological Association meetings or APS, but also, things like the Midwestern Psychological Association. MPA is a great place for students to get like that first talk. Several of our students have been actively going to MPA in the past few years, and then you can see a whole other list of different conferences that folks go to. Some of us in the child area tend to go to things like SRCD or SRA, Research on Adolescence, or Advancing School Mental Health. Folks in the adult world tend to go to ABCT or the International Society for Traumatic Stress Studies. So lots of different places where students are disseminating research. So again, I think just to sort of wrap up here, we have a highly productive program, a highly productive faculty and set of students who are doing great work, who are producing, who are publishing, who are presenting, who are getting grants, and who are doing work that is impacting both the scientific literature and the broader community. All right, until the next video, we'll see you later.